Welcome to the Sahyoun podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the Sahyoun podcast. This is episode 2. I have a very special guest, Matt McInnes Watson from Plyos. He is the godfather of Plyometrics. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for calling me special.
You are special, mate.
Not a lot of, I think there's definitely some people that think I'm pretty special in a, in a not so positive way, but no, I appreciate you having me on. And yeah, it means a lot for you to consider me to bring me on as the second guest. So we better make sure this is a good one, right?
Well, mate, the reason why I brought you on is you've actually opened up my eyes to plyometrics with a different lens. I mean, there's a lot of information out there with plyometrics on social media, and I think the way that you really delve into explaining the benefits of plyometrics for sports, but also how to apply it at such an entry level and build from there. I found your content to be, it just resonated with me, and the way that you explain things was so easy for me to understand. And I think a lot of coaches out there are in the same boat, and they may feel confused with understanding the benefits of plyometrics for sporting performance.
Yeah, it really is a fundamental part of my goal for delivering plyometrics. You know, I've got many pieces to what I try to achieve, whether that's getting the most out of an athlete or educating others, whether you're a coach or an athlete, because there's plenty of athletes that are interested in this stuff as well. But it's delivering it as simply as possible. And I think I think it's pretty obvious as well. The further you go back with my work on Instagram, the more complex it is. And as it's kind of bled forward, I've realized more and more that simplicity has really been the effective part of what I've tried to deliver to people, to get some really complex, some really complex parts of dynamic movement and understanding that, so that you could have a conversation with someone about plyometrics and really be on the same level as them, and importantly, just be able to look at the landscape of really there being just too much that you want to achieve with any sort of training program, and working in mixed martial arts as well is, it's a minefield of understanding where to place your time and effort, because there are so many potentials for you to dig into. So, I look at it in that sense and say, how can I help someone out and not go, here's this really important thing that you should do, here's all the really complex parts to it. Now it's you as the coach should be able to go away and piece that in. And actually, I think that I think it should be the other way around. I think that I should be able to give you the skills to know what a plyometric is, assess how that can fit into your training best, and make it as relatable as possible.
That's awesome, man. That's a great way to put it. And I think you're doing a great job, and you've done that. And, you've got me as a client. I've signed up to your coaching course and now about to sign up to the Plyos program, which is fantastic. But one thing I don't know is I'd love to find out more about you, how you actually got into becoming a coach. What was your sporting background? I think I heard on the David Gray podcast not too long ago, you said you're a high jumper. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are right. Yeah. So I kind of had a pretty straightforward young British lad's upbringing in terms of everything was football or soccer. Really until I was probably 15, 16, and I'm talking like lived and breathed it. Like the other sports hardly existed to me. A couple of my best friends played rugby, so I dabbled a little bit in playing a bit of rugby, but I wasn't built to be hit by other people, I don't think, especially at high velocity. So yeah,
Definitely.
I've probably been the same height as I as I am now since about the age of 15, and when I maybe would have been introduced to rugby at that sort of age. So 191 centimeters, and probably weighed about 67 kg. Like I've just been so long and lean for a long time. And when I transferred into, so we leave kind of high school in the UK. Some high schools have like what's called a sixth form college, but it's basically ages kind of 16, 17 to 19 kind of education as you prepare to go to university. And you just meet a load of different people. It's kind of like a first like initial kind of step into almost like a university setting where all these different people are coming from different places around your local area. So different schools are mixing together. And I met a lot of people that play basketball. And I think the kind of the first year that I was at that college, one of the boys said to me, "Oh, have you ever dunked a basketball?" I was like, "Nope, I've no idea." He goes, "Here's a ball," and we were stood on a court, and I dunked a basketball from the first attempt that I'd ever done. So he was like, "Oh, you should play basketball," and I was like, "Well, hang on, like, I mean, there's a little bit more to this." But anyway, I started to play basketball, realized that you need to start these skills quite a long time ago. I think. Do you know what's quite funny? Actually, I think the first 3-pointer I ever scored was with my feet. I remember.
What?
I remember standing at the top of the arc, and we were just messing around with a couple of basketballs, and I think like the inside of my foot, I just kicked it into the hoop, and it kind of rattled in and dropped down, and then like I was like,
So,
such a typical footballer, like in the
yeah,
UK. If I always saw it when I was a teacher, you could get out the biggest group of balls possible. It could be like tennis balls, footballs, anything, volleyballs. Every British lad starts playing with their feet, no matter what. They don't pick it
yeah.
up as if, even with a basketball, they start doing keepy ups with their feet. And that was me. So it's funny little things like that, yeah, made me realize that I had a lot of skills to learn with my hands. So yeah, I played a little bit of basketball for a couple of years. I was by no means a player. I was an athlete. I was doing dirty work, like trying to grab as many rebounds as possible and trying to win the ball back in that sense. So, and I was quickly shown to track and field. I'd done a little bit of track and field growing up. Done a little bit of triple jump, but just tried it at school meets when I was probably 13, 14. So yeah, I went down to a local track with my college, sixth form college. We competed, and I think I scissored over 6 feet on the first day that I actually tried
Shit.
high jump. So without even a full flopping technique sort of thing. And he was like, "Oh, I think you should go down to your local track, and go to the actual proper team down there." And walked down to a track with my head of the sports department, and met my mentor Eric, the first person I met down there. He was like, "This is the high jump coach, Eric." I was like, "Hi," and that was it. And I've known Eric now for 15 years, and he's completely shaped the whole trajectory of my life.
Shit, that's
Crazy, really
amazing.
crazy. And do you know
So you,
what? I always, sorry, go on.
so I can't believe you just scissored 6 foot. Like for anyone that's listening, like 182 centimeters to scissor 182. I mean, I did high jump in school growing up. There's a reason why I asked, and I think I scissored 1.50 m, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm killing it." And we call it here. It's like the zone. The zone is like when you win your school, high jump.
Yeah,
You then go to the next level and you compete against,
yeah,
other schools and stuff like that. And I think my highest I jumped was 1.70 m, but it wasn't scissor. It was just, obviously the traditional way of jumping over. And to scissor that on with no training, that's huge. So that's
yeah,
impressive.
yeah. And you know what? It's funny because so I probably did like 2 weeks of training with Eric. I went down like a couple times a week, and the club quickly made me a member, and they were like, "We want you to compete for us." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing." And so I'd scissored 185 at the college meets, and and I went to a competition and fully flopped. Well, per se, kind of in inverted commas to what I would, it's not a flop as to what I know now. I jumped 177, and the next day I had another meet, which was it was really close to us. And I jumped 196 and qualified for the national championships as it's called the English schools, which is known as kind of one of the top schools competitions. You represent your county, and the funny part about it was that everyone was like, "Oh my god, you've qualified for the English schools." And I was like, "What's that?" I have no idea. I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
Didn't have a clue. So, yeah, and it was a very, very quick trajectory for me in terms of getting quickly into kind of national level high jumping, because 9 months later, I think I came third at the British Champs as an under 20, and I jumped over 2 meters that year. So, yeah, it was very, very quick in that sense. And yeah, it really started the journey for me of wanting to understand, because you're quickly humbled by people, in every form of competition and sport and stuff. You're the big fish in the little pond, and then you go to bigger ponds and you're like, oh, okay, these guys are pretty good. And then you might progress maybe to the national pond and you're like, oh, these guys are really good. Like, these guys are beyond anything I've ever dreamed of. So, and I quickly was humbled in that sense. So I think it sparked my interest in understanding, how do people move like they do? Like, I've seen someone jump 2 meters 31 in front of me.
Wow.
Like, I've been competing. I wasn't competing against them, but I was competing and out of the competition and finished. And then I got to watch this guy compete.
Yeah.
But
You still competed.
he was, yeah, I was competing with myself, and then the big boy stepped in. But he was Olympic silver medalist in the high jump at London. But you get to, and I saw it indoors, so I saw it on what you kind of indoors is a little bit different to outdoors, in that sometimes you're on what's called boards, so you can feel the contacts and stuff a lot more. When someone takes off and jumps over 220, you can hear that boom, and it's like, oh shit, that's high jumping for you. That's the aggression that you get from someone taking off with that much force throughout their body. So it was a big learning curve in that sense for me to want to question, like, what are these guys doing? Why are they so effective at what they do? And what did I not have at that time that could enable me to kind of get to the stage that I wanted to be, where where they were at. So I think that, and it's not necessarily a negative thing on my mentor and coach's behalf, but I think my inquisitiveness it did destroy me a little bit as an athlete, because I became over analytical, in the sense that I think that I had and my coach kind of drove a little bit too much of a coach's mindset into me from the get-go. And that's not a bad thing. Like, we all had those dreams of being that athlete. And I don't think that there are any coaches that would say, oh no, I wouldn't change what I did as an athlete unless they were, Olympic champion or the world champion or something. But in terms of how I do things day to day now, and the life that I've got with my family and daughter and stuff, like, I absolutely love the things that we do and the business that we run and stuff. So, there are reasons as to why these things happened. And maybe it was just set that I was destined to kind of be a coach rather than an athlete at that sense. But it was Eric and the sport of high jump that drove me to be like that, because I was never that inquisitive in football. I was never that inquisitive in basketball. And yeah, it just drove something in me that was like, this is like, people have never moved like this in front of me in football and basketball. You get to a track and field meet and you're like, these people are special humans.
Yeah.
And what do they do to become these special humans? Obviously, a lot of them have got great genetics, but also they do a lot of training towards that.
Mate, I can definitely relate to what you're saying. I feel like a lot of coaches are not failed athletes, but inquisitive athletes that, like yourself, who want an edge and will research and find and look for ways to enhance their body in order to be a better athlete, and it leads them down a rabbit hole of perhaps falling into the strength and conditioning field and coaching athletes yourself. So that kind of already just rolled into my next question. So obviously, being an athlete yourself, that's what got you into coaching. So right now, what demographic of clientele are you predominantly working with?
It's a great question. It's a question I ask myself daily. It is so vast, the people that I work with now. Like I'm helping. I took on a new client yesterday, an athlete yesterday that I'm going to be working with, who, you know, guys that are working in the parkour field, that are working in the kind of the step on from kind of idio portal kind of stuff. You know, people that are wanting to learn how to use their body effectively, and gain that edge dynamically. So yeah, I've been working with figure skaters, I've been working with American footballers, I've been working with soccer players, MMA athletes. It's so broad. I can't tell you the demo. And you know, maybe it's almost like people would say, oh, that's a really tough way to go about it business wise, and it is. It probably is. You know, it's probably much easier to say, this is my demographic, this is my niche.
I
These
disagree.
are the reasons why.
I disagree now. I think the way it's going now, like I used to think, like, don't get me wrong, I do think there's a lot of merit when a coach has an understanding of the demands of a particular sport when they take part in it. I do think that does give you a more insight by, instead of looking at it from a movement perspective and an outside lens, when you actually feel the demands of the sport yourself, it may help with the way that you would probably prescribe certain exercises, or how you would design someone's program, or influence a way that you would structure someone's training. But I think having just a base as being a great coach, I think you can train anyone as long as you've got sound principles. It doesn't really matter what demographic you work with. I think, you know, you're always going to provide them with more value than someone else who's, do you know what I mean? That's some Joe Blow down the road.
Yeah, and you know, I've definitely found that it's universal in terms of the success that I get out of the programs that I put together. I find a lot of commonalities come out of things. The number one being probably injury prevalence kind of just dropping, really, really dropping down, in terms of how regularly people are picking up kind of lower leg, posterior chain, knee issues. It tends to drop significantly because of how, I just think the art of preparation becomes very apparent for those people, in that we provide a lot of variability to what they may or even may not experience within their sport specific training, and exposure to a whole host of different stimulus in terms of intensity levels. So we might throw a lot of rudimentary volume at someone that could be providing great support for tendon regeneration, for you know, teaching people how to land offset in different directions, placing their foot in different places, all the way through to really exposing them to the most dynamic loads that it probably go beyond the demands of their sport, but it's kind of creating like just an insanely robust body that realistically is probably the most important part for a large demographic of most athletes in most sports, is being able to do more of your sport by creating that robustness there. So it tends to be, without trying to do it, it tends to be one of the biggest benefits that comes off of the back of working with, you know, in seeing, you know, as you said, when you have the skills and the ability to see movement and just train movement as movement rather than kind of specific sport to sport, it all becomes very general in a sense. So we see a lot of crossover in that sense, you know, and obviously off the back end of that, well, we get people super athletic because of the time that they're able to invest into the more specific dynamic work that they might do that's geared towards their actual sport.
Yeah, it's definitely. I got asked a question the other day, like combat athletes are not field-based athletes. Do we need to do, for example, pink tier or high intense single leg hops in order, you know, for a combat sport athlete? And I said, well, probably not, but you should aim towards that. I think if you can expose, like you said, the body to more stress, you're just going to build a more robust athlete in a controlled environment, and hopefully that does have a carryover to their sport. Obviously, with combat sports, there's many moving parts. The more I start to look at the demands of it, the deep tier yielding variations seem to play a big part, especially with in the wrestling demands, in the grappling scrambles. You're going to find yourself in those vulnerable positions. Now, with all the, obviously there's a lot of information out there on social media. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see a lot of coaches make, or athletes actually either prescribing or performing plyometrics?
I think the starting point is often the wrong starting point for most people, and I do preach it quite often in that people have got to learn how to execute the skills of the 5 main landing patterns, and that's to kind of quickly move through them. It's you've got a 2-foot bilateral stance, as if your feet are kind of in a narrow shoulder width stance. And you're progressing forward on the spot, whatever, sideways, backwards, forwards. And then you've got same bilateral movement, but with a slight split stance, moving forward, lateral, backwards, side to side, whatever. Non-exchanging split stance. The step up from that is a split exchanging bilateral stance. So the front leg is moving to the back leg's moving to the front, and you're exchanging as you move forward, backwards, sideways. And then you've got 2 unilateral movements. You've got bounding, which is from one leg to the other. And you've got hopping, which is just using a single limb to move. Those are 5 skills. And people seem to think that it's more towards they are 5 exercises that you can kind of graduate towards. That's more as to what it's seen in terms of you have to have the physical capability to get to that. And I could say, well, cool, we can do things that are pretty rudimentary. And I would argue with most people, unless you're heavily injured, 95% and up of your population should be able to do all of those movement patterns on a very rudimentary level. Some of it might look pretty poor, but you can do it. It's pretty risk-free. Okay, it might not be enormously plyometric at first, but that's fine. I want to teach the skills. I don't want to go through building up the levels of bilateral capabilities.
Yeah.
I don't like it's all well and good, building someone's ability to bounce off of 2 feet and scaling that up and getting more and more and more intense, and then going, right, now we've got to solve the unilateral equation. Then we go back down, and then we're trying to build that. I think that if you can learn the skills of all those 5 landing patterns and then turn everything up gradually, keeping, hopping, which is seen as the most intense form of movement, keeping that there from the get-go and just learning how you can tease that up. And it can be as basic as, can you pick that hopping leg up over the ankle? The next step might be, can you do that over the calf? The final step might be picking it right up underneath your bum or your ass, and slamming it back down into the ground. That's a pretty surefire way of looking at it. So that starting point always kind of gets to me. It's that, in inverted commas, that plyometric progression that I just don't think is necessarily needed and is suffice to providing people the skills that they need to learn very quickly, and they need to train those skills for a significant amount of time before they feel confident in kind of delivering that kind of violent punch that you get in really highly dynamic movement. and that typical progression also goes through movements that aren't plyometric. And we could sit here and discuss, what is a plyometric, and I think the best way that you could look at it is saying to someone, well, let's work on plyometric skills, which are those 5 patterns, and let's then scale up those plyometric skills by adding in more speed or adding in more displacement, whether it's for distance, whether it's for height, adding in complexity, teaching people how to do it sideways or backwards, forwards, in and out changes of direction. Once you're pretty good at that and you can do that, honestly, you don't really need to get that intense over even a year's period. Teach people how to land and take off, teach them how to do it in different formations, changing up combination moves. If you're doing it, on a single leg, can you go from left to right and then do a couple of rights and then, play with it? Be in something like MMA, the most random sport possible. Why not play with variety of movement? Because you never know what you're going to expect to get. And I think
Rhythm.
that's often the case with soft tissue injuries that come in sports like MMA, is some random occurrence will happen. Someone will step back into a position that they haven't stepped back into, and an Achilles will pop, or something will break, or something strange like that. And it comes full circle to the robustness stuff that I spoke about before. Variability in your training is forefront because of the robustness that you enable that athlete to be prepared for. So yeah, I think that is a fundamental part of what people get wrong, is the outset of starting plyometrics, and then also assuming that there's this Mecca and gold kind of, there's this top of the pyramid that we all eventually get to, and it's not necessarily the case. It's about getting to a stage where you can deliver more force, and by doing that yourself, in the sense that, well, I can run faster, therefore I can deliver more force into the ground because I'm carrying more velocity, which makes me sling my leg into the ground faster, which increases the ground reaction force, which stresses the body more.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the number one bane of starting out in plyometrics for me.
Right. That's awesome. Speaking of someone rupturing their Achilles, that was me about 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago now. Sorry, I did it wrestling, and silly me back then, I decided to do plyometrics. Started to do plyometrics the day before I had a wrestling class on, and that was over 4 years ago now, and I remember doing it. I set up some hurdles. This is stuff we'll get into in a second, and put some constraints in the way. And I started doing some lateral single leg hops over these hurdles. First, I was programmed this into my program working with an online coach, because I said I wanted to be a bit more explosive. I wanted to incorporate some plyometric training for combat sports. And I felt my foot it didn't feel right. And I felt like it was too intense. Had a poor night's sleep, went to wrestling at 6 a.m. the next day. During the warm-up, I stepped backwards, boom, snapped the Achilles. From that point, that's when I started to delve into finding out why this happened, and started to connect the dots and really start to delve into the benefits of plyometrics. I know this next question may be a bit, obviously it's probably going to be a bit too hard to answer. There's a lot going on, but I'm guessing you've dealt with people that are recovering from an Achilles rupture, and what your protocol might be in early stages of rehab to get them to return to sport. Obviously, from my understanding, starting with low-level extensive drills, or, would you see a benefit in tall to short landings from a yielding aspect to get that athlete moving fast at a very low level? I know there's a lot of slack on social media with landing mechanics and teaching your athletes how to land, but from someone who's suffered a lower limb injury, myself, like since rupturing my Achilles, a lot of that stuff was designed in my return to sport protocol. And I don't know if it actually did any, I just don't know if it serves any merit in terms of from a rehab perspective in that sense. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've helped I've helped 3 or 4 Achilles ruptures in the last 18 months. And the biggest thing that I think has really been effective was weight bearing as soon as possible. So I definitely helped in the sense that I wasn't just the plyometrics guy, but I was the understanding overload guy. What does it feel like? Because plyometrics is looking at I think the spectrum of body weight loading. So when you're stood still, you're exposed to 1 times body weight. When you walk, it might move to 1.5. Fast walking, maybe 2 times body weight. And then as you kind of, the more like the difference between a race walker that moves fast and someone that's running or jogging is the air time. And that air time, it's kind of the difference between doing like a counter movement jump and doing a plyometric. That race walker, although professional race walkers are, they are seen to be airborne at a certain stage, but if we just kind of take that away, the counter movement jump isn't stimulated as much because there is no spike in ground reaction force because you're falling from being airborne and then striking the ground, and that's the difference that comes between kind of race walking and then into jogging and stuff. So I understand how that exposure to different forces can affect the body, even from a baseline of getting people back to normal walking gait. And some of those RTP scenarios have been really effective in getting back to weight bearing quickly, and then understanding how we can really push things to an extent for people to trust what it feels like to kind of expose that tissue to load. So honestly, it started off very, very basic in the sense that what does it feel like to start to walk fast, and then progress into something that seems maybe a little bit more dynamic, and that's even doing basic things like oscillatory pulses where you're starting to push through the ground and really break down inhibition that you have in that injured site, because that tends to be that tentativeness and inhibition that's built up because of injury has to be broken down, really, because it will get to a stage where the tissue is absolutely fine and it can be exposed to it, but your brain is going, no, we didn't like that last time you did that, and I'm not accepting that you're going to take me through that trauma again. So it tends to be that an extremely high volume of movement or dynamic loading has to get into that. So extensive work is the be all and end all, really, when it comes to that initial return to load, really. And one of the guys that I work with, as a bobsleigh athlete, was doing what I would class as my medium tier plyometrics in 12 weeks after an Achilles rupture. He was able to do some pretty effective bilateral movement. And again, that was, like you mentioned, some of the deep yielding stuff was a really unique way in that we could get a little bit more time under tension through that Achilles when you're loading it up, but you still get the impact of landing, which I quite like, which is quite different. If you were to just do, if you just to do some
depth drops,
even
for
like
example.
body weight squats, something like that. So it's such a difference in just adding that landing element to things, because it just gives that initial spike of force. But then after that you go, oh, okay, I don't need to deflect off of the ground and make it reflexive. The tendon doesn't have to go woof and snap back. It can go, oh, there's that spike in intensity, and now I yield, control, and then come back out of it. And we know that with more time under tension in that sense, through a longer landing, it will offload a little bit more onto the muscle. So the tendon obviously is still getting worked, but not to a degree where the muscle maybe is working a little bit more isometrically and the tendon's getting tugged. So it was a case that we kind of took baby steps into, let's just push the envelope a little bit with the deep tier stuff getting a little bit more aggressive over time. When I say time, I mean kind of months, periods of weeks and stuff, that gradually turning up the intensity of that stuff. But the variability of landings in extensive work was very high very quickly, because I find that learning again how to manipulate the direction of the foot and how it moves, whether you're kind of going through dorsiflexion and plantar flexion movements, whether you're sweeping the foot to go laterally, whether you're rolling off the heel to go backwards, is really important skills that you need to gain back. And I think that it helped significantly with calf girth as well, getting in a lot of extensive plyos in that sense. So honestly, every RTP process has been very, very different for me, because of the type of Achilles rupture that the people have got. The healing process is always different from rupture to rupture. The wound healing process, all this sort of stuff. But I found that even guys with you'll see they might get back to like slow jogging and they'll have like a bit of an asymmetrical kind of limp to things, and that the strength is there. They've done all the strength tests in the tendon, but it's so much about breaking down the inhibition. And I think that doing a lot of kind of running, people try to kind of run that asymmetry out of them, and you're like, oh, it would just come over time. And I found that plyos has been a really effective way to break down that inhibition, and build a little bit more confidence into people, because I don't know what it is. I think that we're very, very effective at avoiding things when we run, because it's such a fundamental movement skill that people have done forever throughout their lives. But not a lot of people have jumped and taken off. If you were to compare how many strides you've taken when you ran in comparison to how many takeoffs you've done in a plyometric movement bilaterally, it would be 0.0001% of it, I should think. So it's a way to expose it in a bit of a different situation that you can build that confidence up. And I saw that there's big transfer in that. And even when it came to things like, helping an American footballer that didn't like to backpedal. He was a defensive back and he didn't like to backpedal because of the Achilles injury that he had. Doing some backwards plyos was a quick way to cross that over and transfer that. And he was like, oh, I've got confidence to do that now, and I can just try that now. So yeah, that was a very long answer to your question, but yeah,
it was definitely couldn't be answered shortly. So there's a lot of context that goes behind that. Funny you say that. I honestly believe it does bridge the gap between strength training and sport performance. Was a missing link was plyometrics. I mean, ever since I started delving into your work, I've noticed a massive improvement with my Achilles and the confidence of being able to load and strike the ground harder and faster. Like you said, with Achilles, stepping backwards was the most daunting part. And I think doing extensive work moving backwards was fantastic for that stretch on the Achilles and giving you the confidence for it. My next question. Obviously, your business has taken off. It's fantastic. I ask this question a lot to a lot of guys. Well, haven't had many on, but there will be soon. But how do you manage, me being a dad as well, and being married and running a business and got a lot of moving parts happening at once? What's your way of dealing with the work-life balance with family, and how do you, any advice out there for coaches who are slammed with work and trying to do it all and have a lot of responsibilities? How are you actually managing that now with everything going on?
I think that, we spoke before we got on here. You're talking about being able to crunch like a reel off of podcasts and stuff, and I've been doing the same, like grabbing social media content off stuff like that. If you're pushing social media, it's finding a time in the day where you're like, this is when I do my social media, get it done, get it out of the way. I'm not a very well scheduled and timetabled person when it comes to social media. So like I spin ideas off of myself, and I'll find an idea one day, write in my notes, and I've just got a backlog of notes that I just take inspiration from. Today I'll go, oh cool, I'll put that together. Finding a little time every day to do that, whether it's first thing that you do in the morning, whether it's whatever after lunch or whatever. But I think I'm finding quickly that I've got a 1-year-old daughter, and it's quite, and people might find it a little bit cringy, but Jordan B. Peterson says that like from the ages of 0 to 4, this is the biggest stage of their lives. So she's the first important part of, so everything else revolves around what I do and the time that I spend with her. Business is second. And people might think that that's, it's crazy, but it's the lucky side that I have of running a business. I don't have to be out at a 9 till 5. So it's very much us trying to navigate it in that sense. And I find that I'm far more happier in the way that I operate business when I've spent time with my daughter, or I hate seeing I can kind of step out of the situation and be kind of floating above it a little bit, and look at a scenario where I'm like, why am I like fending her off and being like, oh no, I have to do this, whilst what, it doesn't matter. Like if she wants my attention there and then she's going to get it. And everything else can just kind of be dropped to the side. So I think, I think getting the most important ducks in a line first is what drives kind of happiness, creativity, passion, and motivation to then find time. You might like we work a lot in the evenings at the moment because our scenario is quite unique in terms of living back with family before we move, and we find ourselves working in the evening. I don't find an issue with it because I don't feel, I get to spend all day with my daughter doing things, and then I'll get to work on things in the evening, and I don't really care that I don't get to watch Netflix and binge something, and it doesn't really bother me. The only thing that I'm not getting right at the moment is getting back into working out and looking after my body in that sense, but we're finding ways. I'm gradually getting into it. But yeah, I think also assuming that everyone else has got it moving perfectly is complete BS, because no one does. Like there's a lot of kind of, it's almost cringy stuff of online, like this must be your morning routine. You're like, that doesn't exist with a 1-year-old, because they can wake up at 5 o'clock, they can wake up 25 times in a night, they can sleep until 8, and you're awake at 6. Like, oh my god, why aren't they awake? Like, it's the most bizarre lifestyle ever, having a young child. So it's really is bullshit when it comes to a morning routine. So let things get done when they get done. And I also treat myself as someone that when I want to do something, I will force myself to do it in a sense of finding time elsewhere, and I'll really push it. So if I am not doing something, that means I'm not passionate about it, and therefore I don't want to do it. And that's why I went into business for myself, was because I didn't want to work for someone doing something that I wasn't keen on doing. so why not continue to live like that, right? That's the way that I see it. The stuff that I've found the most success in our business is through the things that I'm most passionate about. That's where people are like, gee, like you dig into this more than anyone else. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably because I'm so passionate about it. So why not continue to push that? And as you kind of then navigate through more and more through being a small business owner, I think that you just start to decipher things out. You're like, oh, I didn't really enjoy doing that, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to provide that service as much anymore. Or, there are certain things that it might be very lucrative for you, and you're like, oh, this is really boring though, and I don't really like it. And, certain times you might be like, okay, well, it's good for us in a business sense, so I'm going to just get this done. But I tend to find that what you are most passionate about, it kind of reigns really true with other people. They feel that passion in you, and I think that it becomes far more investable for people when someone just doesn't sell it well. Not sell it well, but like how they vibe off of it and how they operate in something. I just don't think it's authentic enough. And you can see it with someone like yourself. You walk and talk it. You are you train regularly, you're constantly honing your own craft as well as coaching guys alongside that. I might not be doing it so much in terms of walking the walk right now, but yeah, we're all in different all in different scenarios, but yeah, we're getting there.
My boy's 3 now. You'll get into a good routine soon. I mean, exactly what you said. Like, I love Jordan Peterson, and I like the way his views on life. And it is true. Like, you'll miss so much in those first few years. I mean, my boy was sick when he was younger, but you do miss a lot. And I think, like, right now, it's like you said, when you get that spare time to actually, you go, all right, I've got an hour now. I've got to get back to clients. I've got to do online check-ins. I might do some social media stuff, and you just fucking work, and you don't waste a second. And you get more stuff done when you've got a bit more constraints in your life, which I find quite useful. But what's next for Plus Plyos?
Well, we're currently piecing together an app. We've been trying to really develop what we're delivering, and an app has been the best way for us to figure that out and navigate that. In the sense that we can do a lot more with our programs. So our programs were initially built kind of on like a bit of a, I don't know whether it was like a scared, premise of stepping onto an online space and being like, oh shit, we don't want to put out PDFs so that people can just grab it, run with it, and kind of not continue to invest in the program. So we designed everything out from the outlay as a video. So our program is, you come on week 1, session 1, that session is a complete start to finish one video. You do the warm up, you do the light tier, the pink tier, the medium tier, and the deep tier. It was very time intensive. I can tell you that.
Jeez.
To edit all of those videos. And we have, in some of our programs, we have up to 6 months worth of programming for 2 sessions a week. And even when you are very good at editing the same thing, it takes you still 20 to 30 minutes to create one session. And that's obviously after I've written the program, which can take, when you're really trying to nail it and get it right, 8-week programs can take some time. So now we're at a stage where I think that people are, they do invest in what we do because of the name we've made for ourselves. So we're at a stage where, like, I'm now going to be delivering an offering. So you could come in, you could grab let's say you're a basketball player, you grab the basketball program. And if you're a starter, we have an intermediate, we have an advanced plus program, we have off season. We now have in season that's coming in, which gives you 2 different options of in season. And in the off season, you now have 3 different options of whether you want it spaced over 2 sessions, 3 sessions, or 4 sessions a week. Things like that are how we really, really developing what the program is going to offer for people, because that's also been a very, very big part of my consulting and coaching in general. Has been a lot of people can't do a big plyometric session and deal with the fatigue off of the back end of it. So we've had to learn quickly how to space that out. And I've always have done that, but I've had to upskill in a sense. How do I do that for a basketball player? How do I do that for an American footballer? How do I do that for a grappler? How do I? So we're offering it in more of a, I wouldn't say like a micro dosing, but a multiple smaller exposure to plyometrics, rather than it all being condensed into 2 sessions a week, and kind of getting people to figure it out themselves. Like I've always had questions, how would I spread these sessions out between 4 sessions a week? Now I'm at a stage where I'm like, cool, we're going to offer that. So you can just come on, bang, here's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, or whatever it might be. And that's a big way in which we're growing what we're offering. It's going to be much more cleaner. You're going to have a calendar, you go on, all this sort of stuff. And off the side of that, I'm going to offer speed stuff on there as well, just at a basic level, some feet programs, some more supplemental things to go alongside it. And yeah, alongside that, I'm going to launch an intensive course, a 10-week intensive course, potentially the back end of the summer, and really push that into giving people the skills to be confident, really to be confident enough to program for anyone and program for longevity, and give people the knowledge and insights into doing that. So that's kind of our outlook for things, in terms of the website and stuff. But we're moving to Southern California in the summer, so we'll be working
Oh,
a
no
lot more. I'll be doing
way.
a lot more face-to-face work with people as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
So you're moving
Yeah.
to the States.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are you now? You're obviously in the UK, right?
We're in the UK. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
in Southampton in the UK. So yeah, we just came back because we were living in Abu Dhabi. So went full time on our business back end of last summer. Moved back to the UK to sort out us moving to the US basically.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Nice.
it's been a super busy period, but that's the kind of outlook for us in terms of plyos and where we're going to be kind of developing that. And I think people will get a lot out of the app, just in terms of its accessibility and ease of use. I think people will really enjoy that, because we just get a lot of that. And also, like, I'm also toying with the idea of just creating things like levels to kind of like a standard. You know, if you've completed the starter program, what standard can you hit? Are you able to, do these movement patterns effectively? Are there some simple tests that you can do to monitor whether you're ready to step forward into the next program and stuff? And yeah, finding small little ways to do things like that for people to go, you know what, I'm at this level with plyos, and I'm able to do these movements, and it's developed me into X, Y, and Z kind of athlete. But yeah, it's all in the works. We're not far from the app. I say we're not far. You know, when you're like, yeah, we're not far, and then my wife, we work
It's a
side
lot
by
of
side.
work.
She goes, "There's a lot to do." I'm like, okay.
Are you designing the app yourself, or are you using
We're working.
software that's
We're working with a white label, just because it's just so much easier to
yeah,
work with a company that basically just white labels the app for us and just plasters pliers everywhere.
yeah,
So yeah, it's
much more cost
it's
effective?
not. Oh my, yeah, I can't even imagine. It's probably
It's
hundreds of
about
thousands of
200. It's
dollars.
about 250 grand. I looked into it, and when I saw the price, I was like, "Fuck!" It's a house deposit right there. So
Well, and you and what do you become? You become kind of like, in terms of your ability to edit it, does it go back to that app developer every time?
well,
Do you know
that's
what I
the
mean? Like,
thing. Yeah, it's shit. We're already constrained for time as it is, and I think that there's too much freaking. I can't take on any more stuff. So, and I get what you're saying. It's just a better way to have an app going. It's just so much easier.
and I just what else do we need much more? Like, the
No,
apps are constantly being developed. The white label apps that people are putting out, they're always being added to, developed in that sense. It's just going to cost you their monthly rate for you to continue to pay for it. But that app's going to
exactly,
continue to develop over time anyway, and the capabilities of it will develop. So I
exactly.
don't see why you'd want to go much deeper than that if you're in our field of work. If you're building if you've got a company that deals with everyday people and, like, I don't know, selling something that improves their shopping experience, do you know what I mean? Then you
Yeah,
need to invest in
something
something
different.
crazy
Yeah,
like that. But
100%.
it's just not needed, I don't think, at our level. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
it's exciting, really exciting.
that's good, man. I can't wait. I'm excited for that 10-week that course you're saying. I'd be definitely
Yeah,
interested on that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
keep me posted on that. And where can we find you?
At Plus Pliers on Instagram, or at McInnes Watson is simplest. I go back and forth as to whether I want to be on other social media platforms, and then just think, I just spend so much time and effort on Instagram, and who on earth, unless you've got a social media team, who on earth is managing that effectively? I very, very rarely see anyone that operates as kind of we do with a small business or whatever online and has quite a good presence that, you know, doesn't have a social media team behind them that would have equal followers on Instagram as to what they do on Twitter, as to what they do on TikTok. It tends to be that people are either quite big on Instagram and they've got like a tenth of that on Twitter, or they've got like, do you know what I mean? Like it's just unmanageable.
Just too, yeah. I'm trying to get off the screens as much as I can, but like,
right.
you know what I mean? It's just, like, I'm on the fucking screens like 5-6 hours a day now because the majority of the business has transitioned online, and it's horrible, but it's what it takes, you know. And I've hired someone now, you know, a little apprentice, and he takes care of podcasts and all the technical side of things. I just don't have the time to do it where I could be training clients and doing my job, you know. So, mate,
it's not your expertise either, right? It's not your expertise,
exactly.
so why?
And mate, I'm no, you know, technical guru when it comes to technology, and I'd probably end up breaking my laptop before I even figured it out. So I would just get frustrated with it all. But that's why I've just gone, look, I'd rather spend time with my son. I'd pay this guy $150. He can do the captions on the apps. I just don't have time for that. So yeah.
I agree.
All good, mate. Well, look, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad you gave up your time to jump on. I look forward to seeing what you bring out in the near future. You know, your content's amazing, and you've definitely changed the game for us coaches when it comes to plyometrics. So thank you for that. Mate, I look forward to the next one.
Yeah. It's I love podcasts. That's why I started my own podcast. And I will equally have you back onto mine. Maybe in the next coming weeks. I've got a list of some great coaches to have. So to have someone in your field as well, like I've been really trying to kind of expose people to just a variety of different coaches in different domains. And it's just great to just get on and talk shit with people that you want to talk with. Like what's better than that? so I hope people enjoy it and gain stuff from some of the conversations that we've had today. But really appreciate you having me on. Keep doing what you're doing because it's obviously working. You're obviously putting out some great stuff. You know, I have my small piece of MMA and grappling knowledge. Some of the stuff you put on, I'm like, I'm not sure I'm quite there in terms of understanding it, but no, I appreciate what you do, and what you're doing with plyos is really cool as well. And I want that to be pushed out more and more for people. So
thank you.
It's awesome.
Mate, I look forward to jumping on.
You'll have a great lineup of guests as well.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
all right.
Hop on the poddy.
That's it, mate. Whenever you want me on, I'll be there. Take care, mate.
Absolutely.
See you, mate. Bye.